Welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating forecast from one crypto analyst who thinks the market is about to make a huge move. We're going to break down all the signals from big real world news all the way down to the nitty gritty chart patterns that are feeding this really bullish prediction.
So get this, the analyst we're exploring used this exact phrase, the calm before the storm, to describe the market right now. What a lot of people see as just boring, sideways action. But the idea here is that this quiet phase, it isn't boredom at all. It's actually the prelude to a much, much bigger move.
So, what's the big idea here?
Well, it really boils down to this. The analyst is convinced that Bitcoin is at this major crossroads. The theory is that what we're seeing right now isn't just market noise. No, it could be the very thing that finally breaks a long-term bearish trend and kicks off a brand new multi-month bull run.
Okay, so where is all this confidence coming from? Well, funnily enough, it doesn't actually start with the charts. First, the analyst points to two major real-world events that could be the fuel for this fire. Catalyst number one is all about institutional confidence. The company MicroStrategy, which I'm sure you know is a huge Bitcoin holder, just went public saying they've scooped up another $120 million worth of Bitcoin.
So, why is one purchase like this such a big deal? I mean, it's not just about the money. When a corporate whale like MicroStrategy makes a massive buy, it really does two key things. First, it pulls a huge chunk of Bitcoin right off the open market, which reduces the available supply. And second, it sends this powerful signal to everyone that the biggest players are still incredibly bullish on Bitcoin's future. Now, the second catalyst is where things get really interesting because it connects crypto to global energy markets. The analyst is pointing to the situation down in Venezuela, which, just look at that number, is sitting on an estimated 300 billion barrels of oil reserves. That's the largest in the entire world. Okay, so here's the economic theory they're floating. If the US gets access to a lot of that oil, it could drive down energy costs for everyone. And if that happens, it could, in theory, stimulate the whole economy, boost company profits, and ultimately pump up what they call risk on assets, like stocks and, you guessed it, crypto. And this really gets to a key assumption in this whole thesis. If you look back, there's often been a really strong correlation between the stock market and crypto. So the thinking goes, if these bigger macro events are pushing stocks higher, it's pretty darn likely that crypto is going to ride that same wave. All right, so that's the big picture story. That's the external stuff. But that macro news, that's only half the thesis. Now we've got to dive into the charts because the analyst also sees key technical signals coming directly from Bitcoin's price action that seem to back this whole bullish case up. Now, real quick, before we jump in, it's helpful to know what tools we're even using here. This is all called technical analysis. And really, all it is looking at old price charts and trading volume to try and spot patterns that have happened before, patterns that might give us a clue about where the price is going next. So the first big signal the analyst points to is something called a bullish divergence. I know it sounds a little complicated, but the idea is actually super simple. You've got the price on the chart going down, hitting a new low, but at the exact same time, a key momentum indicator is actually starting to go up. And when you see that kind of disagreement, traders see it as a huge sign that the selling pressure is getting exhausted and a reversal might be just around the corner. The other thing the analyst is watching like a hawk is the confirmation of this classic W pattern, also known as a double bottom. You can literally see the letter W forming on the chart. Basically, the price tests a low point twice. If it fails to break down that second time and instead rockets up past the middle peak of the W, that is considered a very, very powerful bullish signal. And if this W pattern does get confirmed with a big move up, the analyst has some pretty specific price targets in mind. The first, more conservative target is right around that $100,000 to $101,000 level, with a second target that could even stretch up to around $106,000. So that's the whole case for Bitcoin. But, as we've all seen, Bitcoin rarely ever goes to a party alone. So now let's talk about how this move could create a massive ripple effect across the entire crypto market, especially for the altcoins. And that brings up the big question, right? Is this just a Bitcoin story or is something bigger happening? Well, according to this analyst, the answer is a definite no. The patterns they're seeing in Bitcoin are absolutely not happening in a vacuum. In fact, if you look at Ethereum, the second biggest crypto out there, the analyst points out it's a remarkably similar story. Ethereum's chart is also carving out that same powerful W bottom pattern, which suggests it's also getting close to a huge turning point.
And it doesn't even stop with Ethereum. The analyst sees similar signals popping up all over the place. You've got Solana showing its own bullish divergence, XRP getting close to a major breakout, and even Chainlink is potentially forming its own W bottom. It's this similarity across the whole market that really makes the overall bullish argument so much stronger. Okay, so let's put it all together now. The really crucial point here isn't about any one single signal. It's all about how these different threads, from global news events to super specific chart patterns across a bunch of different coins, are all woven together to form one cohesive argument. This is really what building a market thesis is all about. This analyst isn't just betting on one thing. They're looking at a confluence of factors. You've got strong macro catalysts from the outside world, you have internal technical patterns that support it, and you have historical market correlations that all seem to be pointing in the very same direction. And this quote from the source really just perfectly sums up the whole philosophy. A really strong, high-conviction idea doesn't come from just one chart or one news headline. It comes from stacking multiple, independent signals that are all telling you pretty much the same story. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought here. What we've really done today is unpack how traders build a narrative around market data. When you get all these different signals to line up, it absolutely makes for a compelling case. But it does make you wonder, at what point does a data-driven forecast become a powerful story that traders start to believe in? And at the end of the day, which one has more power to actually move the market?